Disclaimer: the following program contains the views and opinions of the hosts, speakers, and participants. They do not reflect the policies of the producers, advisors, and advertisers of AU Paws Radio, its advisors, advertisers, nor the position of Adelphi University, the Board of Trustees, administrative faculty, or its affiliates. Paws Web radio station encourages freedom of speech but does not endorse any specific viewpoints or messages. Listener discretion is advised, especially for potentially sensitive or controversial topics.
So, hello, local dreamers and stargazers. I hope you've all been doing well in this vast universe of stardust and nebulas. Today, I'm joined by the wonderful Eric and Nia.
Hey, what's up? I'm Eric.
Hi, I'm Nia.
And today, we will be talking about probably one of the most discussed and dissected pieces of musical media ever, OK Computer by Radiohead. Whenever I say that album title, I always feel like that one person who's trying way too hard to be different at the function. But this album has always had such a special place in my life, and I honestly would not have had the amount of character development I did in my youth without it. The project itself was conceived by Tom York and Radiohead in the late 90s, and from my understanding, it was an extremely turbulent process for all the members involved. Just to give a little context, Radiohead had just come off from touring for their sophomore album, The Bends, and felt increasingly pressured to put out a project of matching quality and significance to the album that had just gotten them launched into the UK's alternative rock scene and world. Ironically enough, the group felt that they had been too introspective on The Bends, and they kind of wanted to move towards a more positive sound, but as anyone who has done a full listening to OK Computer knows, it's literally anything besides that. OK Computer uses subtle distortion, electronic devices, and waning guitar effects on almost any given track, and is able to create this weirdly sonically lush landscape of despair and isolation. The majority of it was actually recorded in the allegedly haunted mansion St. Catherine's Court, and I think oddly enough, this kind of lent to the super dissonant and impressive sound it creates within itself. It often pulls from avant-garde jazz albums like Bitches Brew and political ideology of figures like Noam Chomsky. It can really be all over the place, sound-wise, but with the utilization of super complex synthesizers and emerging drum machines, it has moments of hauntingly melancholy acoustic guitars and natural voice reverberations that were done pretty much spontaneously. Before we actually deep dive into the intricacies of OK Computer, Nia is actually going to tell you guys a little bit about what she thought on the album and how she personally ranked some of the songs. So take it away, Nia.
So one of the songs that I actually liked off the album was Electioneering, because the song starts off with a nice rock sound, which really spoke to me, because it reminds me of Carrie Underwood and how she usually combine rock sounds with country. But okay, not to be rude or anything, but this whole album kind of gave me kind of depressing indie music that you would probably hear in a 2000s coming of age movie when the character is going through a big change or the climax of the story. That's all I have to say.
So thank you, Nia, for giving us your opinion on all the songs and giving a brief ranking and just the overall vibe that the listener can kind of expect when they jump into OK Computer for the first time. I think to build off that, one of the main reasons I love this album so much is the world it builds solely through its sonic landscape and its brief flashes of concept and cover art. OK Computer places the listener in a not very distant future rampant with isolation, consumerism, and meaningless interactions. You know, this is a point that has been said a million times, but for the group to have this much foresight into what the rise of neoliberal policies and innovative technologies would have on our Western culture truly is incredible to look at, considering that this was taking place in the 90s. I think it acts as a reflective mirror to artists everywhere 20 years later, asking us, what does technology really entail for us as we continue to evolve and shape ourselves as a society? With the ever-presence of emerging AI and technologies that can wipe out entire communities and populations, I think it's really important we ask ourselves and look to OK Computer for a rational way of dealing with all this. Except there isn't. OK Computer never really ends on a triumphant overcoming of man versus machine theme, or a hero being able to live a life unburdened by the rampant, incessant capitalist culture that has pervaded our lives. I think that's what makes it such a beautifully tragic and haunting project to look back on 20 years down the road. For us as a modern society to admit technology in of itself is a ticking time bomb that leads to greater danger is to admit that the way we live and create things is ultimately unsustainable. For most of us, the forsaking of all these conveniences and luxuries that have undoubtedly made our lives infinitely more comfortable is all too painful and might very well have led to a crisis in how we should decide the extent of technology in our lives. The song Airbag reiterates the theme of being saved by technology, a personal story from Tom York where a relatively simple piece of equipment like an airbag ultimately saved his entire life and future ambition and career in a car crash that would have otherwise ended it all.
Yeah, so interestingly enough, I myself have actually never listened to the album from beginning to end, but kind of going off of what my other members had said, it's like still incredible to acknowledge the foresight kind of conveyed through artistic expression. Being a fan of science fiction, a particular subgenre that comes to mind when pertaining in topics such as consumerism and our relationships with technology, I think of the cyberpunk genre. Classic animated shows such as Ghost in the Shell and Serial Experiments Lane delve into similar themes, predicting the interactions between the human condition and technology. As time passes, technology continues to grow at an exponential rate, and the genre also sometimes delves into similar themes of consumerism, where you mostly see corporations prioritizing profit over the well-being of individuals within the narratives. Technology blurs the lines between what is human and what is machine. It begs the question, what is it about ourselves that make us human? What makes us different than the machines we interact with? Through the exploration of such questions, we are able to determine what being human is all about. And in the case of today's segment, I'd argue that a part of being human is that sense of expression. It is sometimes eerie to witness what used to be deemed as fiction become more of a reality as time goes on. Concerns regarding of technology were found back then and have grown ever since. Fictional narratives portrayed in shows, music, and novels are slowly becoming a reality. There's much uncertainty in how this relationship will change and evolve over time, but one thing is for certain: genuine artistic expression cannot be done by the works of artificial intelligence. For expressions regarding the human experience can only be described by no one else other than humans themselves. That is what makes that expression authentic, and I believe that is one of the core aspects that separates man from machine.
So what is the ultimate answer to this horrifyingly bleak situation we as creators find ourselves in, where almost anyone could utilize the miraculous gifts and abilities we have been able to produce? Well, I don't really think there is a clear, concise answer to that question. As stereotypical and how much of a cop-out that might seem like, I honestly think it's really true. I think when we look at OK Computer and ourselves as aspiring creators, we find a similar answer to what we usually always resort to. That being the ability to intake the situations and circumstances around us to make something authentic, beautiful, and maybe if we're lucky, thought-provoking enough to inspire change. Do I think this relationship and system we formed with technology and consumerism is sustainable at all? No. Do I think a certain select group of people, thinkers, creators, and artists have the ability to make us reconsider how we have merged into this parasitic way of life? Absolutely. But until that distant day comes, we can continue to appreciate Radiohead's amazingly accurate foresight into the future and do our best not to make it come into fruition. With all that being said, that's going to wrap up our episode on OK Computer and all the ways that technology has slowly but surely entangled itself into our lives. Thank you all for listening. Next week, we'll be back with another project Nia has picked out that is wonderfully cool and beautiful, that we'll be able to deep dive and dissect into and tell you all our personal stories with it. So once again, thank you all for listening, and I'll see you local stargazers and dreamers in the next episode. Have a good one, guys.